What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with another jig today. So what I'm going to do today is I'm thinking smallmouth and stuff like that. I've been tying a lot of Marabou, filming and not filming, and I thought I would do, I got an email from like Northland, just like an ad, and it was talking about Marabou jigs and stuff like that, and I thought, I haven't really tied up on video like the really light Marabou jigs that I personally throw, and so I thought I would just do a quick one today. So I can't remember exactly what this jig is called. I think it's a VMC, just a finesse jig, 1/8 ounce, but it's got a weed guard on it. It's actually got 2 little wire weed guards. I really like weed guards just personally because I rarely fish like a giant sand flat that doesn't have anything on the bottom. And there's nothing worse than throwing something like this way out there and it's a 5-minute cast because you're just dragging it along and you've had weeds on it the whole time. So I really like a weed guard, even if it's a really light one. That's just personal preference. This is all black. It's got a little bit of flake in it, and I'm actually not going to add any tinsel in this because I want it to be a really subtle bait. You're not really throwing these when, you know, fish are super duper aggressive. If they are, then just throw a chatterbait or something. But the little bit of flash that I'm going to have is actually going to be Peacock. So I'm just going to, I've got like 8 strands here. I'm going to tie them in 2 at a time, just sporadically throughout my wraps, just to add a little bit of color. This is going to be pretty much all black with one little olive to start. So it's going to have a tiny little olive tail, and it's barely even going to show once I put all this black down. I've got 4 feathers ready to go. I think I've got a 5th ready just in case, but I'm going to end this bait with actually a little rabbit collar just to add a little bit of body by this head, because Marabou, honestly, when you're fishing Marabou, it gets like this thin. And I really don't like a crazy thin bait. I mean, it's supposed to look, you know, like a leech or whatever, but this is 140 Danville in black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this olive, and I got my little water right here, and I'm going to tie that in, and I really won't need hackle pliers or anything because I don't want this bait to be too big, because in 1/8 ounce it's going to sink crazy slow. So I don't want like a crazy bulky bait, and that's why I'm going with a little bit lighter of a thread at 140. Honestly, you could probably get away with 70, but I really don't care that much. All my 70 denier is sitting with my winter stuff, so I didn't feel like digging it out. I don't use a ton of 140. I usually just say, well, 210 or go home. But so I'm just gonna wrap this pretty tight wraps. Get my thread out of the way. Pretty tight wraps with this grain. This is a really thin feather. I purposefully chose this feather. Kind of dug through my olive Marabou bags and just picked this one. It had longer fibers, but it wasn't like crazy bushy, because I don't want this olive to be too absurd. And I don't know how a lot of people tie their Marabou jigs. There's probably a billion Marabou jig tutorials out there, but I really don't like any stem on my Marabou jigs, and so I just take the time to wrap my jigs like this, because then it's just the fibers that are going to stick onto the hook. And I might just get one more after this. And it's not looking bushy because it's all wet. Maybe I'll get one more. And I'll just tie that off. A couple good wraps. And then I'm just going to switch to black. I'm not going to put any Peacock down yet. So I'm going to do, I've got these separated intentionally, the longest fibers on this black feather. This is the longest one. So I'm going to put this on last. I might only do 2. I'm not quite sure yet. I have 4 ready, but I just want a little bit of this green to show. So I'm going to grab actually one with really short fibers. This doesn't even touch the end of that green, and it's going to go right next to it. Marabou jigs are really popular. I've just watched some people will just tie this feather in like this, but you have that stem that is going to just impact the ability for this bait to move and swim and stuff. So I just do it this way. Alright, so that first black one is wrapped in. Now I'm going to grab 2 Peacock Herls, and I'm going to tie these in together. And I just want it to go about where my olive goes to. You could tie in 6 at a time, you can tie in 1 at a time. I'm just doing 2 just because that's what I thought. Then I'll maybe put 2 over here. Peacock can be pretty delicate anyway. These will end up breaking off eventually. Most likely. Marabou is actually pretty tough. These jigs can last a while. So just a couple. And then I'm going to get one more black wrap. I'll put 2 more in. Then it looks like I might end up putting my rabbit down. Alright, so I'm going to put my Peacock in. And I'm just going to lay it down. Couple tight wraps. It's pretty easy to put this Peacock in. Peacock is relatively easy to tie with. Then I got two more. One's kind of messed up, but that's alright. And then I'm just going to do a dubbing loop to finish this off. So it's just, I'm just using black, just rabbit. You can get rabbit pretty much anywhere. It's one of the easier materials to find, and it's not like you gotta buy it quick, otherwise it sells out. So I'll just get back right to where my last Marabou is, and I'll get my, I'm going to use a dubbing twister on this. You could use, I've got one sitting right here. I really like using these two. I usually use these on smaller flies though. That's just out of habit kind of. I'm going to put a little wax down, and I have a huge dubbing loop, but I might not, I would rather just have more than I need than run out of real estate. This is way more than I'm going to need. So I'm going to get that ready. We'll make a little dubbing loop. Alright, so I've got my rabbit. I'm going to put it into my dubbing loop. This isn't like going to be crazy thick or anything. I don't want it to be super thick. I just want it to add just a little bit of a thicker collar, because this is going to be a thinner bait, and I just want to add a little bit of bulk to that, by that head. I don't want that head to stand out crazy. So I'll just get this spun up. And this is only 140, so I kind of got to be careful with how much spinning I do. Just pick this out. But it's not like crazy long. And it's all black. I'm not going to add anything else to this. Then you can kind of just pull out and see. It should be good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet all of this down and peel it back towards the end of my bait, just to make it not crazy frustrating to wrap it. And when it's thin like this, it's really easy to get it all pushed back where you want it. You just kind of pinch your thread and it usually sits back nicely. Then I can work my way up right to where that rabbit's going to start. I'll just tight wraps. I don't have a ton of room, but I really don't care if I wrap over my previous wrap. I don't want to, but I want to fit as much on here as I can. It's going to be tightly packed on there. Just don't cut your thread on your weed guards. These are metal weed guards. They're really cool. But I'm curious to see if they'll rust. I won't even end up using all this. So I'm just going to pack it in here now. And this hook is super flimsy. So now I'm kind of just pushing all of it into there. And there's actually a little, this head goes in a little bit. So I'm probably falling into the head, which is fine. And that should, I'll just work my way back up to the top. Get my cradle out of the way. I want to wrap over this thread, and I almost have no collar at all. If I push back, I can kind of see it. But I should have almost no collar, and I can kind of opposite pull those threads. That should be good. Careful not to cut off all your rabbit. Push all this back and just give it some good wraps. There's a little paint. That's what you're hearing. If you can hear that. A little chunk of paint that's hanging off of there. And then I got my big whip finisher. We'll see if this works. If I can get right under there. Maybe just 3. 1 more. And I should be good to go. So, that little rabbit collar, you can see when I pull this back, this is going to stick out, and I haven't really combed it out yet. But I shouldn't have to, because it was kind of long, but it was not thick. Like, it's not, I don't want some giant, if I wanted a big collar like that, I'd put some dubbing down, some Senyos or something like that, but I just want a really thin one, and this Peacock will end up sticking into there. So, fluff this out. Black Marabou jigs, smallmouth season, go to Mille Lacs or something like that. Junior's Fishing Company, juniorsfishing.com. We'll see you in the next one.